Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Regional Championship round number 7. I'm Mason Clark, joined by Arya Karamchandani, and today we have some more exciting standard matches for you. But before we get into that, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor of the stream here, Heavy Play. You can go to heavyplay.com and use code Dallas2024 to get 10% off everything. And at the end of this round, Arya, we're going to be giving away some Heavy Play store credit. So stay tuned for that. We'll tell you how to do that here in just a couple minutes. But first, before we do all of that, we got to get to the magic action. That's what we're here for. So let's pull up the first deck list and look at what our feature match is going to be. First up, we have Newton on Boros Convoke. Arya, they just love giving us Boros Convoke today.
Yeah, we've seen this is our third Boros Convoke deck, but notably, our third very different list we've seen in this, and a very different matchup. So honestly, I'm not complaining that much. I mean, if we look at the specifics of this list, a lot like the first list, no unimpacals or other snowbally threats in the main deck. Very much looking to go low to the ground, go wide, and win quickly. Full 4Ks of the Gateway Express, full 4 of full for Imminent Recruiter, just 4 of all of the most assertive cards in the deck, not messing around. But in the sideboard, there's like 3 Steel Seraph, 4 Invasion of Gobakhan. So even if game 1 this looks like the other Convoke decks, this notably has like a couple different really strong pivot plans post board with a lot of staying power from something like Invasion of Gobakhan against more controlling decks, and really strong tools against other aggressive decks with Steel Seraph.
Yeah, and on the other side, we have Jason Yee's 5-color Legends deck. This is a deck they lost to at the Pro Tour in the top 8. What have they changed in its deck today?
Yeah, so it ran 4-color Legends at the Pro Tour, lost in top 8, was very happy with the deck, but decided, Jason and the team it's on has a history of taking a perfectly good deck and adding an extra color to it, and it decided, well, my deck for the top 8 of the Pro Tour was really good, so I'm going to add another color to it just in case. Most of what this gets is it gets a more reliable kill with Elasil Core to start with. The 4-color version of the deck so this is really a mid-range deck with a combo finish. There's a bunch of different complicated combos I'll explain when they come up. But Elasil Core with white is a more reliable combo kill piece than the previous things the deck had access to. I saw Jason talking a lot about Kellen as a 2-drop the deck gets access to. It's really powerful. It draws a lot of the strongest cards in the deck. And one thing the deck really, really wants is access to 2-drops that cost 1 colored mana, 1 generic mana, and a legendary, because those contribute to the infinites with Honest Rutstein and Relic of Legends. So Kellen being a third strong 2-drop that you could play, that worked well with the deck, you could play assertively on 2, but also helped you go off, increases its deck's combo potential a bunch without reducing its flaw. And so that's the big draw to white in this version of the already existent Legends combo deck with Relic of Legends.
It also gained a huge card with Pest Control in the sideboard, right? Which is a card for this matchup. Before Jason talked about liking the matchup a fair bit, but with Pest Control, I have to imagine it loves it. But that being said, the matchup is ready. Let's head down to our feature match area and get underway with game number 1. We're going to have Newton on your left and Jason on your right. Looks like Jason is on a Molda 6.
Yeah, fortunately for Jason, this deck mulligans extremely well. The whole like Relic Rona Inti engine does a really good job recouping cards. So I imagine Jason's mulliganing pretty aggressively to make sure there's a good how low to the ground it is.
Yeah, and by the way, we had a lightning fast start here. So we had Voldaren Epicure from Newton into Rona from Jason, followed by Warden of the Inner Sky. We are going to see a little, not quite convoking, but convoke-esque play here from Newton. Look at the top of the deck. Going to scry it to the bottom.
Yeah, and game 1, I think Jason really just wants to combo as much as possible. It's well, if not combo, then at least get to a board state where you can do some fundamentally unfair and loop stuff and get ahead that way, because there's not really enough 1-for-1 interaction to go toe to toe with the Convoke deck, and you really want to find some sort of engine that will let you close out the game really quickly, while having things like Slogurk as annoying blockers for Convoke.
Speaking of which, Slogard comes down with Jason also having Inti in hand. So the entire engine is almost set up there to really draw and burn through our deck. We're going to see Newton make the third land drop here. Going to count up, see exactly what we want to be doing.
Yeah, and in Jason's spot, I mean, this has got to be pretty scary, right? Given this is exactly the matchup it lost to in top 8 of the Pro Tour. So another high stakes match on camera, playing the same matchup. Understand it could understandably be a pretty tough spot. But that said, I have to imagine that post spot games get much better, even if Jason is looking to be a little under the gun here.
Yeah, the addition of pest control to the sideboard is just so huge. Being able to destroy all 1 mana value or less things is just going to be one sided. Where before, you could use cards like Glistening Deluge. That's 3 mana. It kind of gets everything, but sometimes it doesn't. Right now, pest control would just clear things up. And so we're going to see how that goes in game 2. We're going to see a run at end of turn, discard another Cavern of Souls. That's going to grow the Slogurk.
Yeah, and I mean, I one thing about pest control that I want to touch on is specifically it being a 2 mana option rather than temporary lockdown Brotherhood's End at 3 mana. That's really, really important in a deck like Jason's, where using that extra leftover mana lets it double spell, lets it set up the board better, and as a result, have to worry less about the spots where you're putting that squeeze between wiping or playing around a flash threat. So yeah, definitely firmly favored for it post spot, I'd imagine.
We are going to see Inti come down, untap the Rona. We really see how strong looting is with this deck, with Rona just basically, being an engine just to loot and or eventually create mana in the late game.
Yeah, this is exactly the engine the deck wants to assemble. With Slogurk, Inti, and Rona, you've got basically cards for days. It's really hard to run out. So at this point, Jason just really wants to find Old Rutstein and a Relic to get the combo set up so that it can actually win the game.
It looks like we're looking at the top of our deck. Awkwardly for Newton here, we have a bunch of 3-drops in hand, but not enough mana to play them, plus our Gleeful Demolition. Medane's Recruiter and Sanguine Evangelist hiding out there. We're seeing Newton tank on it. If you're Newton here, what are you really looking for?
I think, well, quite possibly just another land. It's either that or some sort of interaction for the Slogurk, but you really want to end the game as quickly as possible. And land lets Newton go do something like Gleeful Demolition plus Medane's Recruiter as a route to victory. But that said, I think we're approaching the point where this game is out of Newton's control. He's quite likely to win even at this spot, but one way or another, it's pretty reliant on what Jason draws and whether Jason finds a way to combo. Because if he doesn't, this board is almost certainly just going to be enough.
Yeah, we see Tyler Resurrected discarded, then Relic of Legends revealed to the NT trigger. We're Odawaring back that, hit another Odawara from the channeling.
Yeah, Relic of Legends is huge in this spot. Relic of Legends means we're one one honest Rutstein away from comboing, and Jason gets a lot of looks for it with the looting with Rona plus bottling with Inti. So I don't like Newton's chances here.
We're going to see Kellen hit there off the Takenuma. We got a Triome exiled via the Inti from the channeling of Takenuma. We're going to see this Relic get cast here after Odawara was played for the land for turn. And this is why this Slogurk deck is so powerful. It's taking Newton having this really strong draw to put us in the back foot. It kind of forces in this spot. If we were even a turn slower, it might just be academic at this point. We're seeing Jason here decide to attack with the Slogurk. Or sorry, maybe tap with the Slogurk. I'm not exactly sure. It is tapping. Excuse me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Getting those lands back, getting notably that Takenuma back is a lot more digs towards old Rutstein. Sorry, honest Rutstein. And Odawara also means that Jason is suddenly a lot less likely to just die on board to the Warden of the Inner Sky, even if there isn't something found to actually combo kill.
All right, and there's the honest rusting you were talking about. Talk us through this combo here.
Okay, so you're in for a treat. So here's the fundamental premise of the combo, and I'm gonna have a little bit to go over it because Jason's just gonna be taking these game actions. So the way the combo works is once you have old Rutstein and Rona in play, all your 2-mana legends, as well as Relic of Legends, of course, all your 2-mana legends are going to cost 1 mana because of Honest Rutstein, and they immediately pay that mana back off of because they immediately tapped a Relic of Legends. Except they're all also untapping Rona, so you're actually going +1 mana on all your 2-mana legends. So you play 3 2-mana legends and you go +3 mana. Then you channel 3 lands to return them to your hand, essentially. And so you go net 0 mana on that interaction. You return Slogurk to hand to get those lands back and replay Slogurk. Slogurk costs 2 mana, rebates one of it itself off the Relic of Legends, and then rebates another mana off of the Rona. So that's again back to mana neutral. So this is a lot of game actions you can take to essentially assemble the same board state over and over again to do nothing. But you can do it as many times as you want. It's a loop. But with Inti in play, you get to exile every single card in your deck to off Inti's triggering off discard ability. And then eventually you can get to the point where 2 of the lands you're channeling are 2 Takanumas that are getting back the same 2 legends over and over. They are legend ruling. Because what your 1-mana land is that you're playing doesn't really matter. It can be an Otawara putting a legend from play into your hand, or Takanuma putting a legend from your graveyard into hand. So either way, you're spending 1 mana to get a legend, and if you have 2 of the same legend, you can loop them over and over. And you then find the 1 copy of Elas Ilkor in the deck and put that into play. And Elas, whenever one of your creatures dies, makes each opponent lose 1 life. So every time you execute this loop, you're not changing the board state at all, except you're making your opponent lose 1 life. And you can do that as many times as you want to kill your opponent.
Okay, did everyone get that? There will be a quiz at the end of this game, which is coming as we deterministic kill. And it looks like Newton's just making sure that's what's going on here as we continue to go through it. It's actually impressive. You described the entire combo, which is incredibly convoluted. You went over everything that a lawyer would need to try it in court with all the corner cases, and we're still going, which is very impressive to me. As we're going to see the Slogurk back to hand as the loop continues.
Yeah, there are some strange fizzle cases where you exile all of the wrong lands, and so somehow end up with the wrong cards in exile to be able to combo. Also there's a more simple secondary combo you can find once you have LS, which is if you have you can just loop 2 copies of Honest Rutstein, because Honest Rutstein costs 2 mana with another Rutstein in play. It rebates 1 itself, rebates 1 off Arona, so that's 2 mana it gives back, and each Honest Rutstein can get back another Rutstein legend rule it, and so you can just loop 2 Rutsteins for infinite death triggers once you have Ellis and Caw, and that also Ellis will Caw in play, and that also wins the game.
Well, it got it done there in game number 1 going up a game. So let's check out its sideboard. What do you like here for Jason?
Well, you mentioned those pest controls, and well, I really want those pest controls. Pest control is huge here. I mean, the main problem the 5-color Legends deck will have in this matchup is how the Boros Convoke deck can kind of go around the 5-color Legends deck. You can't afford to run as much early removal as your stock black-green mid-range decks and such can. So you wanna as Boros Convoke, you want to kind of exploit that weakness, go wide, use the fact they're not being disrupted as much early to get in a bunch of damage, while the 5-color Legends deck is still setting up. And Pest Control is kind of the only counterplay Jason has to that game plan, so it makes a lot of sense for it to bring Pest Control in and lean on that really hard post-board.
Let's check out Newton's deck real quick here before we get into game number 2. Anything we like here out of this side where we talked about, having things like Steel Seraph that maybe let you play a grindier game. Is that something Newton kind of wants here for game number 2?
I don't think Steel Seraph so much is important here as Invasion of Gobakhan to play that grindier game. Steel Seraph pretty useful in getting in over like Gurk's ground defenses. That part of that part is quite frustrating for the Boros Convoke deck, but I think Newton's looking to play a game where he gets off the ground a little quicker and doesn't really get to that point in the first place. The main value coming from Invasion of Gobakan is the ability to disrupt the Gurk deck. Notably, taking Relic of Legends early is huge because it really slows down the development for the Gurk deck. And once the Gurk deck's awkward and stumbling a bit, the Boros deck can really go under it. So I want to lean really hard on this for invasions in Newton's spot and maybe some get lost as just an answer to whatever combo piece or engine piece Jason is leaning on particularly hard in a given game.
Well, we're going to have to see what happens here as game number 2 is ready to go. So let's head on down to our feature match area and see if Newton can force a game 3. Looks like Newton is taking a mulligan here.
Yeah, and I think in Newton's spot, you definitely need to mulligan aggressively. Like with the pest controls and as known information, you really just need as good a hand as possible to try and get under Jason. Even with pest control at 2 mana, it's quite possible to get under it out of the 5-color legends deck, just because the mana is a little awkward on producing white-black off your first 2 lands. And so with something like a Novice Inspector Gleeful Demolition start, Newton could still very feasibly go under Jason, even with a pest control in hand.
Yeah, we do see that Novice Inspector hit the battlefield. And like we talked about last round, right? That Knight Errant is something that sometimes comes down. As we do see a cut down, taking out the Novice Inspector. The Knight Errant is something that lets you sometimes dodge these sort of things. But we are going to see a Gleeful here. And we don't have anything to follow up. So if there's a pest control here, this could be, not game over, but a very awkward spot for Newton. As we are going to see a Zia Taurus Proving Ground tapped in the passing of the turn for Jason.
Yeah, I think in Newton's spot, you can pretty safely assume there's not a pest control from Jason on coming on turn 2, because it's pretty unlikely Jason would have got down the Novice Inspector if there was a pest control in hand. So I think in this spot, you can pretty safely play to the board and lean on the fact that at the very least, Jason is probably had awkward mana that doesn't allow for a pest control, and at the most, maybe just doesn't have one in hand.
Newton here playing a little safe, holding the Resolute Reinforcements. Could have played it and then convoked off it to be able to hit 5 drops, but 3 hits basically everything in the deck. Evidence Recruiter and Novice Inspector are the pickups. It's writing that down as it untaps for turn, and I picked up a Rona, I believe, as we do see a Relic of Legends in the passing of the turn.
Yeah, and Relic is pretty huge here. Once Jason gets that mana engine going, it's pretty easy to dig for something like pest control to try and find whatever your few outs are, just by virtue of having access to a lot of mana, a lot of card flow off Rona. So Relic, not quite as bad as playing a 3-mana Mana Rock on this board might normally look, but still a little awkward given Jason's life total.
Yep. We're going to see the attack and pass. Jason down to 13.
Yeah, and it's getting pretty close to the pest control or bust point for Jason, where we know Newton has Get Lost in hand, I believe. So there's interaction if Jason has a threat that it's leading on here, or defense, or some sort of blocker that it's leading on, which means really something that hits the something that directly affects the Newton's board. Really, its only way of getting out of this game. It's pretty behind on the back foot and doesn't really run cards that are conducive to coming back from a spot like this, other than pest control.
We're going to see Rona get cast, and then you're going to have to help me out on this one. LS, I think?
Elos, I believe.
Elos?
But
okay.
Don't quote me on that one.
I had never seen this card until it won the game last round or last game. So, I'm new to this one in various ways. As it is on the stack, we could see Newton maybe flash in. Looks like we are going to get lost the Rona in response.
Yeah, that makes sense. Rona is both Jason's best way to dig for pest control, and also Jason's biggest mana engine to play out a board that could maybe contest here. So hitting Rhoda with that relic out, I think really solid play. Definitely what I would do in Newton's spot.
As we do see Inti coming down as well.
Yeah, and Newton is definitely going to need that third land sometime soon because as it stands, Elos is representing a block on the Knight Errant. So sure, I do believe Newton's pretty far ahead here, but unless there's some way to actually capitalize on that and deploy more threats to the board, apply more pressure, it might not end up mattering that Newton had a much better start than Jason did.
Yeah, just being unable to play these powerful cards like Imodane's Recruiter to just push through a ton of damage just puts you in such an awkward position. You see Newton tanking here, trying to figure out, am I supposed to get lost something in the main phase and attack? Am I supposed to just move to attacks? If I do attack, what do I playing against someone like Jason, who has been dominating competitive Magic recently? It's definitely a spot where you can get a little anxious sometimes, especially when you're 6-0. You've locked day 2 at this point, but you're not locked, for like the Pro Tour or anything. You're not locked for money. There's still a lot of Magic to be left to play. We're going to see Newton get lost, the Ellis. We're going to see a tapping of it for mana.
And I mean, at this point, musically enough, Jason would be losing more permanents off of a pest control than Newton would, thanks to the 4 maps it has.
That is a very funny place to be as we are going to see what it's going to do for the turn. As there's a tapping of 3 mana, could that be the namesake Slogurk?
Yeah, and I think we're once again getting to the point where Jason is pretty close to comboing here. It has the relic in play. It has 2 important pieces. Once the relic's in play and you start drawing a bunch of cards, and you start finding a bunch of cards, you enter a combo territory very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe Jason is capable of comboing this turn unless the last card is a Rutstein, and even then, I'm not sure if it would be capable of comboing this turn.
Yeah, I am not as well expertise as you are, but I do think we're lacking in mana even with the honest Rusty, as it were.
But we may be looking at a combo kill next turn.
I'll tell you what's a combo kill. This third land plus Imodane's. Well, not actually a combo. It is what Newton needed if we were going to keep applying pressure, but...
Yeah, I think Newton might actually be in a little bit of trouble here, though, because Jason can block the Knight Errant, take exactly 7, go to 1, and maybe try and combo kill next turn off of the land it gets back from Slogurk. Alternatively, it could just double trade, take 4 damage, and try and play a more mid-rangey game. Slogurk giving Jason 3 lands, 3 Neon Dynasty channel lands, which is essentially 3 cards here, means that it's also really far ahead on the 1-for-1 interaction game. So definitely multiple paths open.
Yeah, Jason really showed that these Kamigawa lands are spells, and that is what this the last card hand was an Inti Aria.
Yeah, that explains the Eager Nested trade off the Inti that was already in play.
We are gonna get Slogurk back.
I don't think there's gonna be a combo kill happening quite yet. Oh, Titania is huge though. If Jason gets that into play, that's pretty much game. It can gain so much life so quickly with all the Neon Dynasty channel lands and looping them with Slogurk. So I think it's a 1-turn window for Newton to end this game before Jason stabilizes.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Titania before, 3/4 reach, that whenever a land hits the graveyard, gain 2 life for the lands hitting the yard. That is going to help stabilize you against a deck like this. And Newton taking a think, looking at sort of what Jason has available mana-wise.
Yeah, the fact that there's that Otawara face up too means any actual kill here is just extremely difficult. I I don't like Newton's chances here. I think Newton's best bet is that Jason is somehow unable to get back that Titania due to something like an insufficient amount of lands to bounce Slowcook. But that's also not looking great with the Ottawara face up in hand. So yeah, hard to see how Newton gets out of this one. I suppose Jason might end up slightly constrained on mana, but that's really the only out I see.
Yeah, and this is also really showing just, when you know this deck, how much stronger it is than when you don't, right? This is one of those spots where, maybe against like someone who's newer to the Slowgurk deck, they wouldn't even think to bounce their Slowgurk here into turn with the Ottawa, right? Like, oh, I'm going down, man. Is it really worth it to get these channel lands? And then Newton maybe can crawl back into this game. Believe it or not, Jason knows what they're doing with the Slowgurk deck and is not going to miss small things.
Yeah, I mean, Jason's really there's no one comparable for. Oh, never mind. Why bother with Titania when you just have the kill?
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, Jason not only found this deck, and sort of has innovated it and pushed it and pushed it and pushed it every single event with some small little change that matters a ton. It has just also played it masterfully in a ton of high level events. And it's continuing to do this today as it looks like we have found the combo kill, which should mean, like you said, sometimes there are very weird fringe, like we fail case, but unless that pops up here, this should be game over. And Jason will move on to 7-0.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, you mentioned how well Jason has played this deck, and really, there's no short selling just how much of the case that is. I've heard players preparing for this event describing there as being two real Slowgurk decks, not the 4-color and 5-color versions, but rather playing against Jason and playing against anyone else on the planet. And it's mastery of this deck. I mean, really clear in matches like this. It's just not going to miss a single step, play perfectly, find all those minor edges. And once you have like all those little edges, all those little optimizations really add up in the game like this. Like each one of those optimizations adding like maybe 1% to your chance to combo, really adds up over the course of a long game where suddenly Jason's comboing with the deck like 20% more than anyone else playing it. And so like its win rate just is pretty hard to compete with from really anyone else playing the deck.
Yeah, and you see in the background there, the judge walked over and had a weird look on his face as we are going to see Newton concede to Jason. Congratulations. It moves on to 7-0 and is our winner this round. But Arya, we're the real winners this round because we got to watch that match and we have another feature match ready. But before we do that, we are going to take a quick break. So we'll be back in just a couple minutes.